You're ready for a comeback. And with Purdue Global, you can do more than take classes. You can take charge of your story, of your career, of your life. Earn a degree you can be proud of and get an education employers respect. It's time, your time, not just to go back to school, but to come back and move forward with Purdue Global, Purdue's online university for working adults. Start your comeback at purdueglobal.edu.
Ladies, have you ever thought about getting your sexy on for some professional boudoir photos? To treat yourself or give to someone else? Bad Kitty Photography offers a staff of all-female photographers who create a fun and empowering experience and gorgeous photos. At Bad Kitty Photography, you choose the vibe. Classy, sassy, or down and dirty. Meow. Book a session at badkittyphotography.com. Bad Kitty, a place where good kitties can be bad and bad kitties can be themselves.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. What is up, podcast humans? Thank you for taking the time to check out this very show. If this is your first time here, we cover everything that is involved with independent music, whether it's punk, hardcore, metal, emo, whatever it is, as long as it is of the DIY variety. That is who I'm interested in having conversations with and highlighting what makes them tick and who they are as human beings. Because after all, when we learn more about them, we become more enamored with their art. At least that's the way that it works in my head. But I am very excited because we're bringing a two-headed monster at you. And normally I just have one conversation with a member of the band, but I wanted to put both of these together because I think they are kind of a yin and yang with what we have going on. So first up, I have Jeff Irwin from Will Haven, who is the guitarist. And then right after that, I have Grady Avenell, who is the vocalist from Will Haven. And originally, I had interviewed Grady with the hopes of basically being like, all right, this is the Will Haven episode, so to speak. And Grady referenced Jeff so much, which you'll hear as the sort of, bookend to the discussion that I have with Jeff, that I was like, dude, I'd feel remiss if I did not speak to Jeff. And so it was a really interesting conversation on both parts. And I think that Will Haven, first of all, if you are not familiar with Will Haven, they are releasing their new record called 7, but it's VII, which for those that are, not Roman numeral heads, that means 7. But it's their 7th full length, if I'm not mistaken. And they're an incredible band from Sacramento, California. Definitely came up in the, early 90s hardcore scene and still have a lot of followers within the context of that. I know I discovered them in the mid to late 90s as I became more, I guess, in tune with what it was that was happening within that particular scene. And I've loved them ever since. And so I was excited to have this double-headed conversation. But let's get some business pleasantries out of the way. If you want to support this show for absolutely $0, you can do these few things. Leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page, or you can leave a rating on the Spotify page. All of those things help the show out tremendously, helps people discover it, et cetera, et cetera. You can also share about the show on social media. You can tag people. All that stuff is greatly, greatly appreciated, and it takes maybe less than a minute of your time. And then you can always email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. I love to hear from anybody in regards to future guests, maybe some recommendations from bands, like all that sort of stuff. I love to receive that feedback. And then last, but definitely not least, well, two things actually. You can also subscribe to this channel's YouTube page, which there is a link in the show notes for this. It makes it very easy because people like to consume podcasts on YouTube. So I've tried to make it easy for everybody to do that. And if you are not subscribed and checking out the Outbreak Fest podcast, there's a show or a link in the show notes for that particular podcast. I host it amongst many other people. It's all centered around the culture that the Outbreak Festival over in the United Kingdom is kind of bringing together as far as skate, punk, hardcore, metal, hip hop, all that stuff is all combined together. And I had some great live conversations. I actually just released another episode with a conversation that I had with Jem, the vocalist of Speed. So I can guarantee that if you like this show, you probably will like the conversations had over there, not only by me, but others, because I do like artist interviews, all that sort of stuff. So all the plugs are out of the way, but let's talk to Grady and Jeff from Willhaven. The first conversation will be with Jeff, and then there'll be a little break, and then we will have Grady, like I said, bookending the conversation. Check out the new Willhaven record. It just came out. It's called VII or 7. You can find it on all streaming platforms, and I love it. So here we go with Willhaven. I discovered Willhaven, and honestly, I can't point a finger towards why I picked up your self-titled EP, besides maybe just seeing your name on some flyers when you guys played Showcase Theater here in the Southern California area, but got into you via that first EP. And I just remember like one particular summer because that came out like what, 97, I think, right?
95, 96,
Okay,
96. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember that particular summer, I was doing a lot of traveling with my family, and I just would listen to that and the One King Down Bloodlust Revenge EP. I don't know why, just like on repeat. And what I was always curious about, where you guys were coming from, like, you know, I know that you had started off of the heels of Sock, where, you know, there's clearly a lot of a straight line could be drawn between the two bands, but I am always curious, like, who were you trying to rip off with Willhaven? Like, I know that you, because like you guys were so, you know, unique, where it was like, yeah, you could play hardcore shows, but then you could obviously also play, you know, sort of metal adjacent shows, and you could play with a lot of different bands. And I think certain bands of that era definitely had a more pinpoint direction of like, oh yes, we can specifically play this type of show. So yeah, who are you trying to rip off, Jeff?
Yeah, that is funny you said, because we were in a really weird position when we came out, because our manager at the time was also managing like Earth Crisis and Strife. And so when we put our first EP out, he was getting us on those showcase shows with those type bands. And we became friends with really good friends with Earth Crisis and stuff like that. But I always felt we didn't really match musically. I mean, we were heavy, but we weren't, you know, Firestorm heavy, like, and they had their own genre going. So it was a weird mixture. When we played the Showcase Theater, we get an okay response, but, you know, the hardcore kids we didn't have the riffs and stuff like some of the other bands did. So we were always in a kind of like a weird position. But when we started Willhaven, I grew up with the Far guys and the Deftones guys. You know, those are my friends growing up. So after Sock, I wanted to do something in that vein, but at the same time, I didn't want to rip off Deftones or Far either.
Right.
But naturally, I'm going to sound like them because they're my best friends. So, and I'm influenced by them. So I try to look for something outside of our world that would influence me. And I was a huge Neurosis fan. So after Sock, I was like, okay, I want to keep kind of the Sock vibe, but I want to get some more Neurosis influence involved. And then I was also into Quicksand and Snapcase, stuff like that. So for me, it was just combining everything into one. So you hear a little bit of Neurosis, you hear a little bit of Snapcase, and of course you're going to hear some Deftones and stuff. But, you know, So it was mostly just kind of throwing everything into a blender because that was my first band I'd actually written songs for, because Sock I played drums in and Sean Lopez played guitar and he wrote everything. But Will Haven was my first thing I actually wrote my own song. So for me, it was just putting everything I loved into a blender for the first time and just trying to create something. So I didn't want to be too blatant about anything. I just wanted to kind of put it all in the blender and see what happened. So that's kind of, I ripped off a million bands in that first EP, but you probably can't tell because it's a mixture of everything that I was into at the time.
Right. Yeah. And I don't, and I know that you didn't take that comment disparagingly.
Oh yeah. No.
Right. Cause it's like everybody is building off of the shoulders of giants. And especially when you are, younger and just kind of trying to figure out who the hell you are, you're like, all right, I want to rip off, like you said, I want to try to do what Snapcase is doing, except maybe a little bit this, and like that will eventually turn out to be, something, slightly original when you do put it through the prism of what you're talking about.
That, and also too, I'm a guy I grew up on gangster rap, and I grew up on Pink Floyd, and I grew up on, 90s hardcore. So like, I didn't have a band that like I was totally 100% into. Like I was into a million different bands. So it was hard for me to easily I could have just did the Earth Crisis route and just try to write riffs and stuff like that. But Earth Crisis wasn't the only band I was into. I was into so many different, even Radiohead was my favorite band at the time. So for me, it was just kind of influenced by so many things. And that's why Will Haven kind of turned out the way it did. Like we weren't just influenced by the hardcore scene or just the new metal scene or just the death metal scene. It was like everything was like, we loved all music. So that's kind of how we started that project. Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting because of your scene. Like, I mean, you could almost throw that sort of description in regards to, the list can go on from, Far to Deftones, where it's like, yeah, there's heaviness and like there's an element where all of these bands can play like hardcore shows or whatever. But then there is that element of like, well, they're kind of the weird band on the bill, like always.
Yeah. And it's funny because I remember when Deftones went out with Pantera, I was like, yeah, it kind of fits, but I don't know if the metal crowd's going to like them, even though they're heavy, but they're not Pantera heavy. So yeah, with the Sacto bands, it's always been one of those things where we can, Far went on tour with Sepultura, and the Sepultura fans, they didn't know how to react to Far. Right. So as Sacto bands, we've always been in this weird predicament where you don't really know where to put. We could tour with anybody, but it's always those things. Well, they kind of fit, they don't fit. That's just kind of a Sacramento thing, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it is, and I think to your point too, it also it does. Now the internet has flattened everything in regards to it's very difficult to pinpoint where bands are located based on their sound, but
yeah,
a lot of it, when you do point to a particular scene, like it's, kind of in the proverbial water where people are just like, oh, everyone has their own lanes, but, is kind of existing in this structure, either intended or unintended. And then to your point, like once people start to pay attention to it outside of it and then start to reflect those thoughts back at you, where you're like, oh yeah, I guess it was that we were always kind of the odd band out, no matter what band from Northern California came out.
Yeah, especially back then, because, like when you saw a show at the Showcase Theater, it was like Snapcase, Earth Crisis, Strife, or whatever, bands like that. So there was a lane there as a hardcore show, but there weren't, and now we have festivals. So festivals, there's a billion festivals now, and there you go from everything from like, you'll have Eminem to Cannibal Corpse in the same festival. So now it's almost like it's welcome that more diverse bands are on the same bill. Which makes it easier for bands to kind of stand on their own. But back then, you had a show and it was that show. There wasn't like a lot of like, you wouldn't see an emo band play with Earth Crisis. That was a no-go, So times have changed where it's a little more easier to kind of fit on shows. But back then it was kind of tough, but we enjoyed, I had a blast. I love playing with those bands. We had a great time, but right. It was a different time for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I know Sacramento, broadly speaking, were you actually born and raised there, or where did you come up?
Yeah, I was born and raised Sacramento. Yeah.
Okay. And I know that most people, like when they look at Sacramento, it's that idea of like, oh yeah, you have your, government buildings and your sort of downtown area, and then everything else is just kind of rural cow stuff. Is that reflective of your experience? I know you have a more intimate relation to, Sacramento, broadly speaking, but is it as, I guess, stark as people paint it out to be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a way I always kind of joked we were like the Des Moines, Iowa of California.
Right.
It's like,
Sure.
You have LA and San Francisco and, all these San Diego, all these major metropolitan cities that are amazing. And then there's Sacramento kind of right in the middle. And we are surrounded by, fields and cows and stuff. But we do have the, Lake Tahoe, which is an hour away. So it is more of the country-ish vibe than it is the rural cities. But I think that's why there's so many great things came out of Sacramento. So many great bands. I mean, you can name a million bands in Sacramento that have made it successful in the world. And, we had a big pro skate scene for a while. And I mean, there's been a lot of great things that have come out of Sacramento that we were involved in. So I think we're all pretty proud. I mean, some of the Deftones guys have moved out of Sacramento but they still, Sacramento's kind of still there in their heart. So it's something that we all are very proud of and proud to call home. I don't think we're like, I hate coming from this town at all. Like I think we love coming from Sacramento and seeing what we've all kind of made out of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I really like when bands do fly the flag of wherever they come from high, because it does give, especially of a certain age and era, it gives you a distinct flavor of what was, happening in that particular scene. And so, yeah, it's cool. Like, even bands that, started 2 years ago that are just like, oh yes, we're, this particular, like, oh yeah, we're from, Boise, Idaho or whatever. It's like, That's great. Like, that's cool, because it automatically makes you stand out a little bit than, just every other band that comes from New York or Los Angeles.
Yeah. I kind of wish we had done it more, because there was a point where Far, Deftones, and us all toured together in the US.
Right.
And I wish we'd kind of flown the Sacramento flag a little harder, because this day people are like, you're from the same town as Deftones? I had no idea. And it's like, oh yeah, there was quite a scene here for a while, but we never kind of publicly flew that flag hard, like we should have, though, because Sacramento, there's Papa Roach, Cake, and there's so many bands that came from here that, people probably have no idea that we were all in the same kind of group, and all, it's a special place that born a lot of great bands, but all diverse too. Nobody really stayed to kind of sound the same, which was cool. So I wish we kind of flown the flag a little harder, but it is what it is. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, it could have easily been that, marketing ploy where it's just like, Sacktown rolling through your town.
That's true. It could have turned into the Seattle thing, which kind of was kind of a, oh, you're from Seattle, So yeah, I could get that too.
Right. I am thrilled to welcome on a new sponsor of the show, and that is Sands of Time Recordings. Now, this is a full disclosure. I am releasing, or my band is releasing, a tape with them. So, I'm kind of in their pocket. But Sands of Time Recordings is a nonprofit cassette record label, and they're highlighting some deep cuts, some bands that you might have forgotten about. Let me just go through a few of the releases that they've done. A band called Frostbite from the Philly scene. I love that 7-inch. What Feeds the Fire? Race for Titles, who was a deep Omaha sort of early emo indie cut. And then there's bands that I've literally never heard of, which is exciting because I'm a nerd for this stuff. But there's a band called And Then There Were None. And then there's also a band called In Dire Need. So it's really cool. He donates a portion of the proceeds, or actually all the proceeds, because he's a nonprofit. So he just kind of, rolls the thing over into being able to put out more tapes and then raise money for the specific causes. So go to sandsoftimerecordings.com. You can find out all about what the label has going on. He also sells fanny packs. It's really fun. So follow along in their journey. And maybe in the middle of July, you'll be able to pre-order a Taken tape, which I'm excited to say is going to happen. So sandsoftimerecordings.com. Kind of dovetailing with what you're saying as far as always, kind of not perpetually fitting into a particular scene. I did notice that just like as an outside observer, watching you guys play shows. And like you said, you were friends with all the bands, and like there was no hostility that was, at least in my observation, paid towards Willhaven. But I'm sure you did, like, especially, late 90s, early 2000s, as you guys started to, tour more and obviously have more music out there. I'm sure that there were a lot of tours that you did that you were just the odd band out of, like, well, how do we kind of capture this audience? Not saying that you would like tailor a particular, like, oh, we need to play our songs lighter or whatever. But
yeah,
I'm sure you did have to experience that kind of, all right, well, we're going to roll up our sleeves and try to, play this show with Napalm Death, even though this doesn't necessarily make sense, but we'll still do it.
Yeah. There were times where the only time we really hit us is when we did the Warped Tour in Australia, I think 2003, I believe. And we saw the bill of all the bands on the flyer, and it was basically all, like pop punk bands. I mean, it's Pennywise, AFI, Lagwagon, stuff like that. And we were like Willhaven. I'm like, okay, this is going to be weird, so, but we made the determination, like, just go out and play our heaviest stuff. Like, just let's be the total opposite band of what's on this bill, and if it goes well, it goes well. If not, screw it. We're in Australia. We're having a good time, and we did great on that tour. Like we played the side stage, kind of a number of nights on that tour. but we had a huge crowd out there every night. And then we played the main stage a few times, and that was awesome. So, kids, I think, were accepting to, like, they've heard the same stuff all day, like, and they're excited to hear something like heavy, get their aggression out. And like, they've been there all day sweating. They're like, they hear a heavy, like a metal band, like, yeah, bring it, so it actually worked in our favor, that time. But when we played with that, we toured with Napalm Death, and we toured with like, Hatebreed, stuff like that. I mean, we just kind of did our thing. And we toured with Slipknot on their first record. And that was one I was kind of a little nervous about, because they had just started popping off, and we were playing clubs still, but like they were getting big, quickly. And they had a loyal fan base already, and we were main support for them. I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna be tough. But it went over really well, like we've never had any crowd boo us or give us shit or like, say we suck. We never had that, so I think we got pretty lucky. We still have some heavy songs and stuff, and we can definitely be in your face for an hour.
Sure.
And I think having Grady be such a presence on stage, like, he's got that Henry Rollins kind of vibe to him where you don't want to look him in the eye, so right. I think that helped too, having a very like strong presence as a front man, which I think people are like, yeah, I don't want to fuck with these guys, so
sure.
That helped a lot. But yeah, we just kind of did our own thing. But the Warped Tour was like the one where like, fuck it, let's just go play our heaviest stuff and just let's not play anything quiet,
Right. Yeah. Let's see where it goes from here.
Yeah. For the most part, we just did our thing and just kind of let the chips fall where they go.
Sure. It sounds like just in the way that, Grady was articulating a lot of the different, things that you were bringing to the band, that a lot of the business fell on your shoulders in regards to whether it was booking shows, dealing with record labels and that sort of stuff. Was that a mantle you were excited to wear, or was that just kind of hoisted upon you? Cause it's like, oh, Jeff knows what he's doing to promoters and stuff like that.
Yeah. I grew up, my roommate was Sean Lopez from Far for a long time. So I was there from the beginning of Far all the way till they got signed to Sony and past Sony. And so watching Sean and Jonah and those guys, like how they went about their business of booking shows and talking to agents and stuff like that, I was front row seat to all of this. Like I was there when they had the meetings for singles at Sony. I went into Sony with Sean Records and Immortal Records with Sean all the time, and met Paul Pontius and met all the A&R guys. So I knew the inner workings of like labels and agents and stuff a little bit just from being around those guys. I got a big lesson in that. So when I took Willhaven, when we started doing Willhaven, I kind of knew a little bit about the business side, and I reached out to friends of mine that I've already met through the Far guys and contacts and stuff. And they helped me, get some shows. And then Troy, who put out our first EP, actually the one you were talking about.
Yep.
He put out his own money, and he became kind of our pseudo manager, and he got us the shows to showcase. And then Revelation knew of Troy, and they started conversing. And then I got a call from Troy saying, "Hey, Revelation Records is going to call you. They want to maybe sign you to a deal." And I'm like, awesome. So Troy was kind of our initial jump into the scene, and then once William started the ball rolling, we just got lucky with a lot of things, though. We did Revelation, got a CMJ in New York, and then hooked us up with Bloodlet, and we got a couple shows of Bloodlet on the East Coast. And then And then Troy got us some shows with Coalesce and Converge on the East Coast. And then after we did our first record, I was hanging out with Chino, and he's like, "Hey, let's go Willhaven Deftones tour across the U.S." I'm like, "Let's do it." So, and then after that, of course, the Deftones connection just opened the floodgates for other tours to come our way. And then I became friends with Gloria Cavalera, and she managed us for a while. So it just kind of snowballed really slowly. But I always made sure that I was kind of the main contact of the band and kind of made decisions business wise, and I let the guys in too. But I always tried to make the main contacts. I didn't want anybody to just run with us and just, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, because having control of our music and what we do is kind of important to us.
Right.
And so I've always kept it that way. But now we don't have a manager. We do have an agent in Europe, but no agent in the US. And I'm kind of the acting manager of the band. And I actually enjoy it. It gets to be, it's kind of a pain in the ass a lot of times. But at the same time, I like it. I like kind of being in the know and kind of making decisions. And luckily those guys trust me, to like make the right decisions and take the band in the right direction. We're in a weird predicament because we still have day jobs, and we still have families and stuff outside the band. And then I have to like see what opportunities are there for the band too. And then I have to ask the guys, like, is this something that we can do? Is this something you guys are into? And then I have to go back to the people and say, oh, well, we can't do this. We can do this. So it's a tough balance, but I enjoy it. It's like I live two different lives. I have, my personal life, then I have the band life that I do. And
sure,
so it keeps it interesting, keeps it fun, but yeah, it's tough, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well,
right. Well, a lot of it is herding cats as well, where it's just
totally.
Oh, everybody is available except this person. All right,
exactly.
Well, we can't do this. Yeah.
We have a tour coming up in August, and our bass player is going to be at Burning Man. So I went back and asked our original bass player, Mike, to come back and fill in for a week on that tour. So he's coming to play with us again, which is awesome because I've missed Mike. He moved to Texas right after our Vordia record. And then, so him coming back to be with us is just awesome. I'm excited about that. But yeah, just stuff like that. We try to like make it work somehow.
Sure. Absolutely.
There's always something for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The, something I've always, admired and noticed about the band as well is that you guys really stuck to the apolitical nature of the band. Like you really haven't, tackled many, whether it's political issues or, on the first EP, you talked like loosely about vegetarianism and stuff like that. But that seemed like it was kind of hard baked into the band from the get-go, because clearly at that time when you guys were starting, there was a lot of bands that, had ethics and principles, not to say that you guys didn't, but were articulating them in a song form and lyrically. Was that part of the intention as the band was starting, or was that just kind of, something that developed over time?
No, that was, we didn't have any political outset. There was a lot of that going on with like I said, going back to Earth Crisis with Firestorm and the whole straight edge movement and stuff like that. We were definitely deep in that. And we were straight edge back then, just because that was what we were into. And Sean Lopez, that was me and Grady Sean and Grady all lived together in the same house when we started Willhaven. So, and Sean was a big straight edge kid back in the day, and he was into that when we were hanging out with them. So we, just as a friendship, we just became into that. So when we started Willhaven, that was kind of in our DNA a little bit more Grady, because I just wrote the music to write the music, and then I let Grady do his own thing. Like he writes his own lyrics, he has his own outlook on things. I let him do his part. I just create the music. So as a friendship, we were into that a little bit. I just think Grady was just kind of searching for like what he wanted to write about, because he was a newbie, really. When we did Sock, he didn't really have lyrics. He just kind of made stuff up on the spot. But with Willhaven, he actually had to write lyrics, and I don't think he knew exactly what angle he wanted to take at that point. So the first EP was just really trial and error. And then when we get to El Diablo, he's just on his own personal journey there. It's like he's just on a whole new. I think that's where he found out, well, I can just write about myself and my life and what I see. And I think that's when he finally hit him that he's like, I have a lot inside me that I can get out, instead of worried about political things, which was cool at the time. I can write about myself. And so from El Diablo on, that's all he's been, is on his self journey through his eyes, and which has been amazing. I love that. I love that we can be a band where it's like, I've always been fascinated by Grady's lyrics. Have just always blown me away, because I've known that guy since 5th grade, and just seeing his writing, his poetic writing in our music, it just blows me. I'm like, wow, that's some really deep stuff you've written about, and how he fits it into the music. I don't know how he does it, but he does.
Right.
But yeah, it's awesome. But we've never had a political stance ever. It's just all personal stuff, really.
Sure. And also on that topic, the idea that this was something that was very sweetly articulated by Grady, but I was just asking him in regards to the reason that he personally still cares about music and everything like that, and he pointed the finger directly at you as far as like your enthusiasm and just the reason to not only keep the band going, but just kind of like have that foot in the pool, so to speak. Is that your nature kind of as a person, as far as like, enthusiasm and kind of like bringing others along, that sort of like inclusiveness, like where does that come from? Or is that something that you even recognize in yourself?
It's funny. I definitely brought people into my lives that I don't know if I dragged them into it or they just kind of willing, like, yeah, I'll go. Oh, it sounds like fun. So
Sure.
But yeah, I like to have fun, and I think it's when you definitely have more fun, whatever it is, when you include your friends. Like I raced motorcycles for a long time, and then I had friends that were doing it, but I asked a couple of my other friends, like, hey, you should go ride with me, and they ended up riding with me, and it just made it more fun when they were around, because they were my best friends, and we were sharing this thing together. So I just have more fun when my friends are involved, whatever it be, music or sports or whatever. So with Willhaven, it's always been about friendship. The guys in the band have been my friends for a long time. Grady since 5th grade. Mitch has been in the band for 25 years now. Like, Mike, our original bass player, I met him in 7th grade. Adrian, I've known forever. So it's like, these are my best friends. And so playing music, I love playing music. It's my favorite thing to do. But when you get to play with and travel with your best friends, it's like, it's the ultimate, like, it's the ultimate thing, So it just, for me, it's more about, it's just friendship and sharing stuff together and just having a good time. And, but there's also really thing about Willhaven. It's like, we're still growing as a band. We're still like kind of evolving in our sound and trying to figure out what it is. And it's always a challenge. And I love that too. I love the challenge of it. So it's many things, but definitely friendship is the number one thing. And, I love being around Grady. I love being around the guys. And so when we get to practice, we get to hang out, we talk shit, we just hang out for a couple hours in practice, and then going on the road with them is a blast. So it's more, I think it's more that than anything.
Sure. And I something that I'm sure you recognize as you interact with, the civilians in the outside world that aren't privy to the weirdo subculture that we are, that, those like long lasting relationships, like, yes, people can point to like, oh, I'm still friends with people in my high school or whatever, but there comes an element of the amount of time you spend with each other in a band, like, is so like, it's so much. And like, you would have every opportunity to either dislike these people or just be like, yeah, we don't need to do this anymore, but you feel pulled back to one another in that, sort of magnetic pull.
Yeah, definitely. I think that so many times. If I was in a band with guys I didn't really know, I'd probably Willhaven would not be around for sure, absolutely. But having my brothers in Willhaven, it's we can have a fight, but we know it's nothing serious. It's like, oh, we're just being stupid, and then the next day we're totally cool, So it's definitely more than a band. It's definitely a family thing, and like Grady and I and Mike and even Mitch, like, we've been through so much together over the last 30 years that, it started in, elementary school, and we're still going, but being in the band, it's like, God, we have so many, when we sit around and practice, we just keep telling stories of like old tour stories and old, trouble we got into and crazy stuff, crazy nights. Like, we talk about it all the time, and so going back and having those memories together, it's awesome. And I think when we get old, we're still going to talk about those old tour stories and stuff. Cause yeah, you're right. Like being in a band, you're closer than most friendships are, cause you're with each other 24/7. You're traveling the world together. You're going to have ups and you have downs, and you go through pain and happiness. And it's a whole nother level of connection. I mean, I always say that's why the Deftones are still together, because those guys have been brothers since they were 16 years old. Any other band, but their kind of history would be broken up in a minute, but they're best friends, they're brothers, and they love each other, and they're just going to stick it out, So it's definitely a different vibe when if you just put a band through a newspaper, it doesn't last,
Right. Definitely. The last thing I want to hit you on is the fact that, I mean, like you said, the band has constantly been evolving and gone through, spurts of activity and inactivity. And, it's like, oh, we're broken up, and like, we're not, here's new records or whatever. When did you yourself have to, because I mean, clearly there are records that people like more than others, whether it's critically or, you play the songs live and you're just like, oh, this doesn't hit as much as, something off whatever, Carpe Diem or what have you. When did you yourself have to kind of, I guess, build a little callousness in regards to people saying that, this new record sucks or whatever? Like, why don't you guys play the old stuff? Or is that something that you are, just like insulating yourself from, where it's like, well, that's not going to affect what it is that we're doing as a band, because that's obviously not why we exist. I
mean, yeah, no, you do care about what your fans think, for sure. That definitely, when you go to write a song or something, you're like, all right, are people going to dig this? Are they going to be into it? But at the same time, on the other hand, it's like, I'm kind of doing this for me and my friends, too. So there's a balance there. I mean, I don't get too much involved in like what people say about old new stuff, because I mean, when you have a fan base, especially a cult fan base like we have, there's going to be people that are, I mean, there's a lot of people that take Will Haven to heart, and they feel like they own the band, especially in a cult band like us, like we're definitely homegrown. And so a lot of people feel like they have a stake in Will Haven, so they want it to sound a certain way. I get it. I have bands like that, like, oh, I wish they would sound like that, or I wish they put out a record like that again. And I'm guilty of that too. But being in a band, you're like, well, I already did that. Like, I already, you want to sound like Carpe Diem. We already kind of did Carpe Diem. Like,
right.
I can't keep doing Carpe Diem over and over again, So, because to me, those songs are very simple and they're easy to play. And I'm like, oh, I get kind of bored playing those sometimes. I'm going to do something a little more challenging, So I get it. I do the same thing with my favorite bands. But, what I've come down to is like, I just want to create something that I love personally, that I'm proud of. And if people hate it, awesome. If they love it, even more awesome. It's like, I don't get involved too much with that anymore. I just want to create something that when I look back at my catalog, like when I'm old, I'm 80 years old, and I look back at our catalog, I'm like, we put out some pretty damn good records,
Sure.
And they've all been kind of diverse. There's been one record that's been an exact copy of the last one, just because that one did well, like we've always kind of just reached out a little more, kind of, try to evolve a little bit. Cause I don't think when we started Will Haven, we wanted to be a hardcore band. We just wanted to be a band, and of course we were playing with hardcore bands, but we weren't trying to be a hardcore band. We were just wanted to be a music band, So that's why I'm saying we're still growing as a band, because I don't know what we want to be, like, do we want to be a death metal band? Do we want to be a hardcore band? Do we want to be, more like Deftones? We're just all over the place. Like, what are we? We don't know. We're just writing music, and whatever sounds good to us and we love playing, like that's kind of where it leads us to. So, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of records I look back, I'm like, oh, we could have done a little better. But for the most part, I would say I'm pretty happy with what we've accomplished, because when we started Will Haven, like none of us knew how to play our instruments. Like, I played drums forever. First time I played a guitar was when I started writing a Will Haven song.
Right.
First time I played guitar. Mike never played bass before. He started playing bass. Wayne never played drums ever. He started playing drums. So like from go to that to where we are now, I'm like, okay, we put out a lot of good records not knowing what the hell we were doing, Sure. Because we're not seasoned musicians. We're not, we're not technical musicians. We just play by heart and feel. And that's all we've done. And that's kind of what led us to where we are now. So
right.
When I look back, I'm pretty proud of El Diablo, WHVN, Carpe Diem, Dire is one of my favorite records. Morte, and I love our new one. Our new one that to me is like one of my favorite records, just because it's so diverse. It's all over the place. I love that. So, I look back, I'm really, really proud of everything we've done. Yeah.
And I think too, on that same idea, the fact that you don't exist in the trappings of what a, full-time touring 250 days out of the year band feels, where yes, you are obviously catering to your own interests, and the fact that it's not like you're going to release a EDM record for the next record. I mean, maybe you will, but you don't have that pressure that's applied to you of like, you guys got to do this because you got to get back on the hamster wheel and, release this and tour this and make a record that sounds like this one or whatever. It's like, you don't have that. You can just do whatever it is that you want, because hopefully the people that have grown along with you, or maybe dipped out, but then are now dipping back in because they're like, oh yeah, I'll check out that new Will Haven record. They'll hopefully have grown with you.
Yeah. It's kind of hit and miss, because for a band like, we'll just take Deftones since they're friends of ours, but they are on that cycle where they put out a record and they go tour, they play the festivals. So people kind of are always in the loop of what Deftones are doing because they expect it, right? Like all right, it's time for a new Deftones record. When's that coming out? Or they should be touring because the record just came out. So they're always in people's minds a little bit like, oh, what's the next Deftones thing? As for Will Haven, like we're in and then we're out, and that hurts us a little bit because people think that we're gone, and we're like, okay, well, they must have broken up. I don't know when they're going to come out with something again, or I don't see them touring anytime soon, so they must be done. And then put out a record, people will find out 2 years later, oh, you guys put out a record out? I had no idea. So it hurts us is like trying to get another more interest in the band, or trying to keep that fan base growing. Definitely hurts us not having that cycle go. But at the same time, we don't have the pressure of that for sure, but it does hurt us a little bit too. For me, like one wish I always had that we did have that opportunity like the Deftones do, because for me, like I only can put so much into my writing because, of course I got my job and life outside of the band that I have to attend to. But if I was able to focus strictly on the band for a while, I would be curious to see what we would come up with musically, because when our records, we put a lot into them, but we don't get to put the 100% of our lives into it like touring musicians do. And that's something I always wish we could have done, just to see what we could have come up with. We could have spent, 6 months in a room together just writing, because a lot of these writing sessions I do at home, and I bring in practice. We practice for 3 hours and then do a demo real quick, and then like, oh, that sounds good, and work on it. But for us to sit in a room for 6 months and just create together, I would have loved to see what we could have done. So I think it would have been something pretty amazing. But so it's life, there's balances to it, and there's good and there's bad. But I mean, I can't take away everything that we've been able to do just as a cult band, or whatever we are. We've done some pretty amazing things, put out some great records, and I mean that's means more to me than anything. So.
Right.
I'm pretty proud of what we've done.
Sure. Or alternatively too, you guys could suck if you have more time to devote to it.
Yeah, that's true. We might worry about it too much and just, dissect it to where it sounds like crap. Yeah, that could happen too, for sure. Like I said, there's always a good and a bad. You never know.
It is funny because I joke around with bands that, once their first record hits and, they're on tour constantly, it's usually the second or third LP that is, all the lyrics are about tour, where it's like, life in the van, like, and, a tale as old as time when you can kind of look at those things and then be like, well, wait, are they so far removed from real life that they don't even know what to write about anymore because they don't have relationships back at home, et cetera, et cetera. And so, it is that, where it's like, well, maybe it is like that, rooted to like you come home and have a job at a bagel store or whatever. It's like those give you the experiences of like, God, this customer sucks. Like, I need to write about it or whatever. It's like,
that's a great point too, because a lot of our music does come from just releasing pent up energy that we don't normally get to, release at home. Like touring bands, they get that out every night. Yeah. But for us, it's like, okay, now it's time to make a record. We're angry, we're pissed, we're bored. We're like, let's go write, and like Grady's been through so much in the past, like 10 years, whatever, that he has a lot to write about. So yeah, you're right on that aspect. I totally agree with you on that. And it's definitely, you definitely have to take what's in you. And I say that for live shows too, because Willhaven, we don't get to play a lot. So when we do play the shows, we play hard, because like we're loving the moment. We're in it. We're like, yes, we're finally playing in front of a crowd. We haven't done this in like 4 years, so yeah, I agree with you there. Like we definitely have all this pent up stuff that we're ready to get out, and when we play a show, we go hard for sure.
Right. You're like,
even though we're 50 years old, we still go hard. And I see a lot of touring bands, like they're kind of just in the mode now, it's like they played so many shows, they played so many nights that they don't, the energy just isn't there anymore. They're just kind of like in robotic mode,
Yeah.
And then we play, it's like, no, we're going hard,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave the stage and not be able to breathe.
Right. Yeah. It's like, who knows that we might not even be able to play a show ever again.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, totally. I totally, I agree with you there for sure.
Let us speak about our friends at rockabilia.com because they have a promo code, first and foremost, that will give you 10% off your entire order. 100 words or less will give you that free, sweet, sweet discount of 10%. And when I say free, it's because you're going to load up your cart with, say you're a fan of Slipknot. You're like, oh my gosh, look at this. They have an exclusive t-shirt collection with them. And oh, maybe you like Avenged Sevenfold, or maybe you like Aerosmith. I don't care what it is. They got it in spades. All of it's officially licensed, ships from the Midwest here in the United States of America, independently owned and operated for over 30 years. They've been doing the damn thing, and I love them for that. So again, 100 words or less, 10% off your entire order. Rockabilia.com is your assignment. And then your, completion, where I will give you an A+ is if you order from them. All of a sudden I'm a teacher or something like that. But anyways, I digress. But rockabilia.com is the place to go. 100 words or less is the promo code for 10% off. Thank you for your continued support, Rockabilia. All right, here's a little break in the action. That was obviously Jeff from Willhaven, and I do know that there was a phone ringing in the background occasionally, and I did what I could to remove it, but then there were some where I'm like, you know what, I'm just leaving that in there because it's going to be too difficult to edit around it, so, that's just what happens sometimes. I want to keep it real or keep it 100, whatever kids say, but anyways, now here is the discussion that I had with Grady, the vocalist of the band, to be able to book in this conversation. So here's Grady. Putting the focus on you as a person, just from a pure biographical thing, like, were you actually born and raised in Northern California? I couldn't really decipher that from the, internet sleuthing I was doing on you.
Yeah, I was born in Sacramento.
Okay.
And raised, still live less than a half mile from my parents' house. So.
Got it.
Yeah, born and raised.
What keeps you there? Because clearly you have obviously done a lot of touring. You've experienced a lot of different areas of the world beyond the obvious of family and friends and stuff like that. What do you think keeps you connected to Sacramento?
Shoot, I don't know. Yeah, besides family, this is my home, and it's always has been, and never really wanted to move anywhere else.
Sure. As simple as that.
Yeah.
So what was your family structure like as you were growing up? Like mom and dad in the house, brothers and sisters? What did that look like?
Oh, I have, let's see, my dad, my stepmom, and then I have a stepbrother and a stepsister who they're like 10 and 5 years older than I am. And then a younger brother that's just over a year younger than I am. And I don't know, growing up, I was really close with my brother. And then, because we both went to the same high school. And then my stepbrother, he I think when I started high school, he had just graduated from high school, so didn't get to spend, the high school years with him. But yeah, we're all, for the most, I'm really close with my brother. And then my stepbrother actually moved out to Alabama, so it's kind of hard to keep in touch with him. But
sure.
But yeah, just a normal childhood.
Got it.
Playing soccer. And,
That was what I was going to ask next, as far as like when you, as you started to, grow up a little bit in regards to maybe going to, late elementary school, early junior high, what were you like? Did you care about school? Were you, just a sports kid? Were you, an indoor video game kid? Like, what did you find yourself gravitating towards?
Yeah, I was average as far as school goes. Wasn't the best in, but yeah, I wasn't into video games. I've never been into video games at all. Yeah, my dad lives right across the street from a park, so during football season, the group of kids in the neighborhood would be out playing football, and then we'd play baseball and soccer, and then yeah, so it was good, a lot of fun growing up, and that's I actually met Jeff in 6th grade, and then we were friends, or have been friends ever since that. And then our original bass player Mike, we met him in junior high, and then we've all been friends, since then. So it was kind of nice growing up with them, and then starting the band with them as well. It's kind of a neat experience.
Yeah. I do think it is pretty unique when people that, like yourself, start playing in bands and start cultivating these relationships and are part of a subculture. And then, as you grow older, like many of the times you still remain friends with them as long as there obviously isn't some dramatic blow up of a band breaking up or whatever, or even in people that do go through that still end up being friends later. I think it's a unique experience where people like, what do you mean you've known that person for 30 years? You're not that old. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Yeah, for sure. So as you started to, have more of an identity, and like, how did the idea of, music and like independent music, how did that kind of, jump into your brain?
Oh, shoot. Well, I played trumpet in junior high. I think I played violin in 6th grade, but I never really practiced that much, so I was never good at it. And then Jeff had always played drums, and sort of towards the end of high school, that's when Mike picked up the bass. And so they would jam in the garage, and then it wasn't till actually when Sean from FAR, Jeff, and Chris from FAR, we all lived in the same house, and I don't know if Sean was kind of getting bored with FAR or just wanted to do something different, and that's when we started the Sock, that band. And then me being the poor kid and not having an instrument, I went and did vocals. It was the easy route, but I think that's what kind of kicked off me getting into the music. Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure also with all of you guys kind of getting into a lot of different styles of independent music, were you all just kind of exposing each other to a bunch of different bands and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. Sean was in Inner Strength previously. It was a hardcore band.
Yep.
And then he kind of really more into hardcore and that genre. But yeah, it was because I'd always been into just rock, and then Jeff got me into heavy metal back in the day when we first started hanging out. But
got it.
Yeah, I think that's where these little inputs came in.
Sure. Did you have any, aspirations of a future in regards to your career, where you expected to kind of go along the, family business or go to college and all of that sort of stuff? Was there expectations placed on you for that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I was going to stay living at home, my dad said I had to go to college. So I did junior college for a little bit, and I was just done with being in school, and so I didn't go that route. And then I never really had any like aspiring career ideas once I got out of high school, but
right.
Yeah, and then worked in like the coffee industry for a while, and then
were you doing that?
Started having kids.
Yeah, were you doing that while the band was touring? Like you would, kind of dip in and out of coffee shop jobs and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I started out at a coffee shop, and it was kind of a bigger one for it. Started in Sacramento, and they kind of blew up a little bit as Java City. And this guy that was a delivery driver for Java City, he'd come in, and he was in a band called Bureau the Glorious from Sacramento, and so I would always chat him up when he was delivering, and I was like, dude, get me into the warehouse. I want to get into the coffee warehouse because there's better hours and more pay and all that jack.
Sure.
But so yeah, and then I ended up going to the distribution warehouse where there was a bunch of guys that were in bands, and so it really worked out like as far as touring would go, because they were kind of used to guys coming in and out when they would go on their tours, so it worked out really good. So I was there for probably like 15 years.
Okay.
And yeah, and they're pretty cool about, hey, I'm going to be gone for 2 months. And they're like, sure, job will be here when you get back. So,
right. Which honestly,
that worked out well.
Oh, totally. Like those are the ideal jobs for people that are, playing in bands, and that like, okay, whatever money I save up will be going towards, the gas tank and food and that sort of stuff. But you feel, safe that when you land home, you're like, all right, cool. I'll just dip back in and obviously get enough money for rent. And maybe, we made enough money where I can take home like $300 off merch sales or something like that. But yeah, that's ideal because you feel a little more rooted to real life rather than just like, all right, I got to quit a job every 3 months or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You felt a lot more secure coming home instead of, having to find a new job every time.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I can only burn so many bridges by continually quitting here.
Yeah. Doesn't look good on the resume.
No, it's like, Grady, can you tell me why you have 17 coffee shop jobs in a matter of 5 years? Yeah, because I tour. That doesn't mean you're dependable.
Oh.
and so as you started to, like go to more independent minded shows and obviously things that were a little more, attainable for you, like watching people play on floors and VFW halls or whatever, did you immediately like the idea of like trying to play in a band, or was that just, like you were talking about where you were hanging out with your friends and all of them played instruments and, you were over there with your orchestral instrument and like, well, I can't do this, so I guess I'll just scream.
Shoot. I don't know. Yeah. I never had like the bug to go out and do it. It was just like right spot at the right time, and it just worked out like that. So,
sure.
Yeah.
You weren't like, right. You weren't one of those days. I'm going to be, see my name on the marquee, and I'll have this rock star dream fulfilled.
Yeah, no, I wasn't that guy. I was like, oh man, I got to start a band and be out there and be like the main dude. That wasn't me. So
right.
Just kind of lucked into it pretty much.
Sure. Well, I guess on the flip side, like once you started to sing and, tour, and obviously people started to pay attention to what Will Haven was doing, was it uncomfortable for you to like receive that attention as far as, people wanting to talk to you after the show and that sort of stuff? Or was that relatively easy for you to kind of step into?
Yeah, that wasn't too bad, because like especially when we were doing bigger tours, we never brought anybody with us. So, you know, we were humping on our gear and going and selling shirts. So I just get off the stage and go straight to the merch booth and start. So shirts, like especially in Europe, people would come up to you and you're like, "Oh my God, weren't you just on stage?" And blah blah blah. And it's like, "Yeah, I'm just selling shirts. Got to make money." So,
right.
Yeah. So it wasn't too hard. People have people come up to me, and it was weird. Like when we play in Showcase and being fans of like Strife and Earth Crisis, and then seeing those guys, you know, would want to chat, and it's like, oh man, you know, these guys are in, you know, the huge bands, and so that was kind of weird, you know, starting to talk with, you know, good guys in other bands that I admired.
Right. Yeah, that was exciting for you to have a small part of that.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to kind of look into the idea of, you know, Sacramento, like you said, as a kind of music scene. And even though the bands didn't sound similar, it seemed like a pretty tight-knit community overall, just because of, you know, maybe your lack of venues and, you know, the idea of as long as you were a heavy band in some capacity, then, you know, you were all kind of friends with one another. Is that an accurate statement, or was it, not saying that you had beef with a bunch of other bands or anything like that, but was it, was it cool?
Yeah, there was a main, like the main venue in Sac. There's a bunch of different ones, but the main venue that we all used to go to and play at was the Cattle Club. And, you know, almost every weekend they'd have a decent show there. And so you go there and kind of do your networking. And, but yeah, as far as, there weren't like really any cliques that I knew of in Sac, but being able to go to different shows and, you know, meet new people, and like, hey, let's play a show together, and some decent promoters in Sac that were doing the shows really helped out.
Got it.
Getting our name out there.
Sure. And from what you've described and what you were talking about earlier, like Sock was your first band experience. And as you started to, you know, play shows in and around the area, was it, was it what you expected, or was it very, you know, drastically different than any expectations you had going into it?
It was what I expected, I imagine, I guess. So, because, you know, I've been going to shows and kind of doing a little bit of roadieing for FAR. So, you know, it was pretty much what I expected. And, you know, being such a different genre of music that we would started out playing with, you know, you just see the jaws drop out, you know, in the crowd going like, what the fuck is this, you know? And so that was kind of fun to like see people's reactions to Sock originally, and then Willhaven.
Sure. And I honestly never heard Sock. Like, what were you guys, I guess, aspiring to try to sound like? You know, what bands were you trying to rip off? Because obviously that's how every first band starts.
It's probably not exactly like Willhaven, but kind of like the beginning of Willhaven. So
okay,
just like Willhaven, but worse. I don't know.
Sure.
But Sean, you know, we had Sean in the band. He was a great guitarist, and actually, Mitch is from Willhaven and is in another band with some guys. I think they're in England. And last time we were over there, one of the guys in this band, I forget their name as well, but he was talking about Sock, and I think he said he had a CD or the original tape, and I was like, oh man, I don't even have one of those. And then he actually just sent, Mitch gave it to me last night, a CD of the Sock songs. And actually, I tried to put it in the car this morning and it wouldn't read it. So,
so you can't
sent it for nothing.
Yeah, you don't have a fresh memory of what sock sounds like.
No.
Yeah.
Don't. I'll have to use.
Got it. And from that, I mean, like you said, Sock was, sort of a early version of what Will Haven was doing. And then once you transitioned into Will Haven and you started to, like actually go on West Coast tours and, play shows like farther outside of your hometown, did you enjoy touring, or was that something you had to kind of work your way up to?
Oh, I loved it. Loved going to see different cities and inside your hometown and having people dig it. That's one of the best things.
Sure.
I don't like recording and stuff and that side of it. I'm in a band to play, and so yeah, I loved going on tour, and I get super excited about it. Jeff just shot us a bunch of dates that we're going to try and do, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Got it.
Been sitting around too long.
Sure. And with that, I mean, a lot of the times the business side of things, so whether it's like dealing with record labels or booking tours, all that sort of stuff, sometimes it ends up just on the singer's shoulders because that just, I don't know, seems to work out that way. Was that a side of the band that you were interested in and took a part in, or did you want to stay as far away as possible from it?
Yeah, I wasn't interested in it at all.
Yeah.
Jeff takes care of most of that, and then we had when Will Haven first started, we had a manager who pretty much booked everything for us. So I was like, you take care of that, and I'll do my thing.
Right. Just tell me where to be, and then I'll be able to figure that out.
Yeah, where to show up. Good to go.
Right. And on that topic too, the idea that it seemed like, especially in the early 2000s, at that point, people had started to pay attention to Sacramento as a scene. Obviously, with Far and Deftones, and even further down the line, a band like Simon Says or whatever. Like a lot of major labels were trying to figure out what was happening, kind of up there. And did you guys? I mean, I know obviously you put out records on Revelation and stuff like that. Did you guys sort of entertain other ideas before deciding to work with Rev and stuff like that?
No, not really. I think we lucked out to get on Revelation, and we never really aspired to get on a major label. It all kind of seems like a racket, anyways, but. Yeah, I was happy with just being on Revelation.
Sure.
I didn't need anything larger than that.
Sure.
It helps when it comes to tour funding, but yeah, I was definitely happy to be on Revelation.
Yeah,
it was good enough for me.
Totally. I mean, it's a very logical and cool fit because you didn't sound like any of the other bands, on the label, but at the same time, like that also inspires people to, give you the time of day and checking out what you guys have going on. Obviously being on such a, storied record label, it's like, oh yeah, people have no choice but to pay attention to that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Revelation's, up there in the genre. So, people check that out and then see, what's this Will Haven? And next thing you know, we got some more fans.
Right. Exactly. Kind of along that same line of the idea that, you guys played with hardcore bands, you could play with metal bands, you could play with, rock bands or whatever. You guys definitely did your fair share of, mixed bills where it's arguably you were maybe the heaviest band on the bill. And then there are other times where you're like, Wow. We are not as heavy as most of the bands playing on this or whatever. What are some either tours or show experiences that, kind of stick out in your brain as far as the, the maybe weird fits?
Probably when we went out with Napalm Death.
Yep. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Actually, we didn't get like a bad response, but yeah, it's different, totally different band, totally different fans. So it's kind of nice to, get ourselves out there with some new people. But let's see, what other tours? Oh, Tour Satana. That was kind of different. But that was in England, and like the kids and people that go out to shows in England, they're like, whatever in front of them, they just love it. So, well, they're all about it.
Evilgreed.net is the place that you need to go to find a really, really cool portfolio of bands and record labels that sell their stuff directly to you. And on top of that, I am giving you a promo code that's literally giving you free money right now. This will get you 10% off of your entire order. Use the code 100words. Evilgreed.net is the place that you can go. What's really, really cool about them is they have a very specific point of view. They almost act like a record label where they collect, partners, whether it's direct bands or record labels, and sell their stuff online. They make it really, really easy. They do a lot of tour merch fulfillment as well. So bands that maybe tour over in Europe, because that's where they're based out of, Berlin, Germany. And then, they're done with their tour. What do they do with their merch? They can't carry it back with them. That's where evilgreed.net comes into play. But no joke, some of the bands that they work with, we got Brutus, 200 Stab Wounds, Power Trip, Nails, Blood Incantation, Sun, Boris. I could go on, but have fun poking around their website. And I said that they were located in Berlin, Germany. And that may be scary for some of you in the US. You're like, dude, if I order from them, it's going to take forever. It's going to cost an arm and a leg to get stuff shipped over to me. That is not the case at all. I've ordered from them before, and it gets to me in like around a week or so, and I'm based in California. So please trust me in saying that this stuff is of high quality, and they will ship it out to you lickety split. So promo code 100words, evilgreed.net gives you 10% off your entire order. 100 words is the promo code. Thank you very much for your continued support, Evil Greed. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Trust me in saying that life's paths are not very clear. Most of the time. I mean, honestly, we're all kind of taking stabs in the dark, but that is what makes therapy beautiful, because you can bounce these ideas and these things you're going through, whether it's relationship stuff, career stuff, whatever it is. When you have someone you can lean on, it makes the world just look that much clearer. I'm a huge advocate for therapy, and that is why I love working with BetterHelp. If you are thinking of starting therapy, please give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and because of that, it is extremely convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You can just fill out a brief questionnaire, then you get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you're not digging the vibe, you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray to get 10% off your first month. Just do it. Trust me in saying that therapy is helped out my life tremendously, and I think it can help yours out too. That's betterhelp.com/Ray. You get 10% off your first month. Try it. Therapy is great. Now on with the show. In other, interviews that you've done in the past, I know that there has been, you've mentioned about your, willingness to step away from the band because clearly, the idea of making a, comfortable living within, playing in a aggressive music band, is very difficult to do. And do you when you were kind of running up against it and being like, oh man, it's either, I got to focus on my life at home or I got to focus on the band. Did you have kind of like a tipping point, whether it was a tour or a record cycle or, something in your head that sticks out where it's like, oh yeah, I need to make the decision for myself now?
No, not like that. Not like something came up and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I got to focus on, other stuff. I think it was at a point where I knew it was like I didn't want to be selfish, and I know like the rest of the band, my bandmates wanted to tour more, do as much as they can, and I didn't want to hold them back. So, and it was just getting rough, with home life and this and that, just trying to be gone, being gone for a few weeks or a month at a time.
Sure.
So
you're like, I'll politely bow out.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm quitting for good, but I'll step back, and luckily Jeff Jaworski was able to step right in, and that works out perfect.
Right. So as you were transitioning out from the touring lifestyle, the idea that there are many people that I know, like as you start to, assimilate back to being in, real life and all that sort of stuff, like there sometimes is that struggle of like, I want to be on the road, or for many years I was known as this person in this band, where it's just like, you're Grady from Willhaven, and like, because you're, still not really technically, I mean, you're part of the band, but not really. Was it difficult for you to kind of transition out of it, or were you excited about the sort of opportunities that were outside of the band?
It wasn't hard to transition, and I wasn't excited about it, about anything. Yeah, it was a hard decision to step away, but it wasn't like, okay, I'm stepping away from Willhaven, I'm looking forward to doing this now. And there wasn't anything like that. It was basically just that, I needed to focus on my family, because I wasn't getting that much support for being in a band from my family. So
right,
I was like, just kind of make a decision and do it, and we'll see where that leads.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, there's only so long, like, especially like you said, once you have other people who are dependent on you, not even to like, make money or whatever, but to be an active participant in the household, then it's like, well, how active can you be when you're gone as long as you have been?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. Something I've personally observed about Willhaven, and I know that others have as well, is that you never really traveled from a lyrical perspective in regards to, like politics or, honestly, the only song that I can really trace back to like a specific issue is like, your first EP, like, singing about vegetarianism or, animal rights in some loose manner. I'm guessing that was very intentional of you, that there wasn't this, the band wasn't going to be like a, agenda-based band. It was more, talking about obviously feelings, emotions, and sort of esoteric things like that. Or was that just kind of, it evolved over time?
Yeah, no, we never set out to, be this march with us kind of band and shove politics down your throat. That was never in the agenda for us. And I think just lyric writing wise, I just found, my spot or my niche was just like, dealing or writing about myself or what's like immediately around me, and not trying. I never wanted to be a preacher kind of vocalist at all. And there's nothing wrong with people that do want to be like that, but that just wasn't me.
Got it. Sure. That makes sense. And as you were transitioning out of the band, and like you said, it sounds like you worked in the coffee beat. Was that something that you dove right back into as there was obviously more time for you to, spend at home and figure out what you want to do from a career perspective?
I did that for a little bit, and then ended up getting into a career that I've been doing for almost 17 years now.
Nice. With the idea of like still, even though you weren't touring with the band, you were, still attached to it. And then, once the opportunity came for you to, jump back into it, you were obviously excited to, take on the mantle and everything. The, you don't need to play in a band anymore. Like, that idea that like, okay, like, once people have kind of accomplished what they wanted to do with their band or whatever, they kind of step away, but, you guys still are, vibrant and care a lot about what you are artistically doing. What keeps you personally, what keeps you kind of engaged with the idea of, playing in a band and creating songs?
I think it's Jeff. Jeff just is so into continuing to play music and coming up with new music and stuff like that. So he's kind of inspiring, for me to keep going. And if he started coming up with shitty songs, it'd be like, fuck this. Right. But he's still, he's still writing good music. So it's keeping me going.
Sure. Well, that's cool that it's the, I guess, enthusiasm around the material and the fact that you could still have a relationship with, the people that you play in the band with, as opposed to, just kind of like whatever. It's like, I got to get this out of my head. It's just like, oh no, like this person that I play with is inspiring. So it inspires me.
Yeah, no, totally.
That's great.
And he's really enthusiastic about everything and upbeat and positive. So yeah, it's been great.
That's cool.
Great to have a band.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely makes it easier. For like you were mentioning, you have a family, and I'm sure your kids in some way, shape, or form have interacted with your music, or maybe seen you play live. How do they react to your music, or the fact that Dad yells into a microphone? Like, how's that sit in their brains?
Yeah, they're not really into it.
Sure.
Like, I took my oldest son, when we did like a West Coast tour, and I brought him with us. And he had a good time, but at the same time, he's like, this isn't the kind of music I like, Dad, but...
Totally.
I'm like, hey, dude, come practice with me. And he's like, no thanks. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I think you may be alarmed if, your, whatever your children like the stuff that you're doing. 'Cause it's like, wait, aren't you supposed to rebel against me? Shouldn't you be thinking of your own stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But yeah, they're all just like, yep, this is a thing Dad does.
Right. Instead of, going to play golf on the weekends, he's going to, yell in some people's faces in the UK. It's fine.
Exactly.
Right. And last question I'll ask you is the, idea of also still being connected to, heavy music, and still have, a desire to not only play it, but, probably in some way, shape, or form consume it. How's your relationship with music now? Is it one of those things where you kind of, listen to what you've sort of always listened to, or do you try to seek out new music? What's the vibe there?
Mostly I just listen to what I've always listened to, but it's kind of funny. I kind of live under a rock. I don't branch out too much. Like, what was it, last year sometime, I finally heard like Cult of Luna.
Oh, sure.
And they're, that latest album, I've never heard them before. That I've heard the name, but then, I started listening to that last album, and I was like, holy shit, dude, this is fucking awesome. I need to start listening to more music.
There we go. You can understand why I had to have conversations with both of them, right? It's so cool to see people who are sort of later in their musical life have such a profound love for one another. And I really do think that that is where Avery and Jeff exist. It's so cool to see people just still be creative. You know, you don't have to give up the day job or whatever in order to still kind of do the thing, and vice versa. I really, really admire and appreciate what Will Haven does. So thank you very much to Dave for setting these interviews up, and Jeff and Grady for their time. Very much appreciated. Next week, I have a long gestating conversation. This is a podcast that I tried to set up many years ago when he actually lived in Southern California, but we weren't able to meet up and blah, blah, blah. Stuff got in the way. But I have Stephen Andrew Miller, the guitarist from Unbroken. He also played in Kill Holiday, also played in Crushed on You, has a new project going on. He is a musician that I've looked up to forever, and I've been able to become friendly with him over the years. And it's really weird for me to say that because Unbroken was and is still such a legendary band in my own head. So being friends with people who play in that band is just, I don't know, it's mind melting for me. So I had a long discussion with Stephen, and it was great. He was very open and honest about just everything going on in his life, including my really, really in-depth questions about life, love, regret. And so, yeah, that's what we got next week. And until then, please be safe, everybody.
Listen up, beauties. Yes, you, the serious seductress, the empowered enchantress. Real talk? Your hotness must be preserved for the ages. Bad Kitty Photography has specialized in boudoir photography since 1997. A Bad Kitty Photography session is fun and empowering, led by their team of all-female photographers. Book your spot today at badkittyphotography.com. Bad Kitty, a place where good kitties can be bad and bad kitties can be themselves.
This summer, it's time for Barbie.
Me?
To discover
The real world. No!
Watch me!
From director Greta Gerwig.
I've started to get all these weirdo feelings. It's anxiety.
You're gonna start getting sad and wishy and complicated. She's not dead, she's just having an existential crisis.
Starring Margot Robbie.
Yay!
And Ryan Gosling.
I'm just a dude.
Ken isn't something we're worried about.
What?
Barbie. Only in theaters July 21st. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.
Feeling comfortable starts with the right bra. And Lovelet's got you covered. Literally. The Dream Curve Bubble Full Coverage Push-Up Bra provides unparalleled support and comfort from day to night, making it the ultimate bra for anyone leading a busy lifestyle. Designed in up to a cup each with lightweight foam cups and memory foam straps, it's so comfortable you'll probably even forget you're wearing it. We're giving you 15% off your Dream Curve bra at lovelit.com with discount code LOVE15. That's LUV15 at lovelit.com.